On the Sheeler Motor Mile, I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com. Example 2009 Chevrolet Impala stock number KA260134B plus tax tag title and $697 processing fee.
The clock is ticking. Time is running out for Virginia citizens to purchase modern sporting rifles and magazines from Big Boys Guns. Beat the July 1st deadline. Right now, the selection is robust at Big Boys Guns. ARs, AKs, and the most popular handguns will soon be banned from sale in the state of Virginia. Don't wait. Visit Big Boys Guns before the inventory is gone and not allowed to return. Shop 24/7 at BigBoysGuns.com and in store on Route 460 in Blue Ridge.
At the Y, strength means something different. It means people of all ages being together. It means you can be swishing the game-winning shot, learning to plie in first position, jabbing, crossing, and hooking a punching bag, canoeing in the lake at summer camp, donating food for your neighbors, watching your son learn about water safety in the pool. 175 years later, there's still no place like this place. Get involved at your Y. Learn more at ymca.org.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
I am as much of a sucker for Nick Sabanisms as anybody out there. But if there's one area where it really kind of irritates me is when he gets onto his pontificating rants and omits how he basically is doing all the things that he is criticizing college sports for doing. And look, I get it. I respect the guy tremendously. He is the greatest college football coach of all time. Not just the 7 national championships, but also the way he literally transformed and revolutionized the game. He found the loopholes in the system that he is now criticizing people for finding the loopholes in. And look, I use a lot of Nick Sabanisms in the fast lane and just putting a good show together. Or sales for people that think, you could just hire a salesperson. They're going to bring success. If not, kick them to the curb or replace them with somebody else. Anybody could do this job. You look at most media entities around the area, you got one primary seller at each one that's really strong, and then you're kind of churning the rest of the roster because it's really hard after that person that's at the top in an organization. Heck, if you're doing it right, it's probably hard if you're at the top of your respective organization. Or putting together a show. We've done it for almost a decade, since 2019. I know we're patting ourselves on the back. Might have to get some elbow reconstructive surgery. Dear Lord, please don't let that actually be the case. But, people have this delusion that you can just do something like sales, like putting a show together. Heck, people think of it when I run. Like, there's this idea that I'm going to win every race. The reality is, I do not win almost all of the races in which I enter. I'm fortunate to say I've won some before, but I don't normally win. It's never really on my feet, so to speak. Because for the most part, there are plenty of people out there that are a lot faster than I am. But it's amazing because there's this idea, and this is where the Nick Sabanism comes in and where I respect the guy. Because the process is what got him to be as dominant as he was. I think my favorite clip of all of his is the idea that you could just snap your fingers and generate another stellar show. Snap your fingers and generate great content at Fastlane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or whatever your media personality social media pages. Snap your fingers and generate another sale because the person that's in charge has a great idea, and all of a sudden, because their idea is great, it's going to align with every business owner out there. Never mind, they have their own ideas, which are often different from your ideas. And the business owner's objective is not the same as your objective with your great sales idea. And Nick Saban had the greatest explanation for that.
Beyond the first team, or first grouping a little bit, does that concern you? I mean, you got another week of preseason practice. Does that concern you at this point that there's not more progress from that second and third groups?
Well, I've been concerned about this all along. I mean, so I don't even know why you would ask the question, because you all don't think, you just think we just, whatever happens, we just another player. And everything's going to be perfect. All of our fans think that. You all think that. That's what you write about. That's the message that you send out there. And yeah, I worry about it all the time. I may be the only one, but I do worry about it.
So I have a lot of respect for Nick Saban on a number of levels, his ability to revolutionize the game of college football at the beginning of his tenure at Alabama in particular. Bigger support staffs, more budgets that were dedicated to programs than ever before, finding ways to revolutionize it, putting Alabama in a spot where they were before, but re-solidifying it as one of the dominant programs in college football. He did all of that, and he won at a high level at Michigan State and at LSU in previous stops. But there's an element of Nick Saban where it requires us to impromptu play the what he said and what he meant soundbite.
The best place to find true insight is in a press conference.
He cares about the players. We've got a true veteran that's been in this game a long time. He really wanted this opportunity.
It's not a media scrum.
They found a way to persevere through it. They didn't get down. They didn't start pointing fingers. They all looked at themselves in the mirror and said, hey, we're going to figure out what it takes. The least important thing in a game is the score at halftime, right?
It's listening to the Fast Lane dissect what's really being said by your favorite players, coaches, and administrators.
In the 40-minute game, no one cares. You got to be able to execute on both ends of the floor. Man, they play hard for 40 minutes.
It's time for what he or she said and what he or she meant.
And yes, Team Snarky is going to be making its appearance in this section of what he said and what he meant, because we praised Nick Saban a moment ago. I've admitted I use a lot of this philosophy. I wouldn't say we are to local media or even certainly larger media to what Nick Saban is to his profession. College football coach, greatest of all time. We're nowhere close to that. And frankly, where we are is to be judged by other people, although we are grateful for continuing to have strong audience report numbers at the Virginia Talk Radio Network. But Nick Saban had this prediction about college sports. He met with Congress, by the way, full backstory on this. Congress has been speaking with leaders from the Big Ten, the SEC, Notre Dame, and other prominent figures in college sports for a while now, and the latest iteration has come over the last couple of days because they have nothing better to do, clearly, in Washington, D.C. That is a jab at both Republicans and at Democrats, so either way, we're offending you with no shame in the fast lane. But the Big Ten and the SEC released a joint statement yesterday saying they do not support the Protect College Sports Act as drafted by a Republican, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, and a Democrat, Senator Maria Cantwell of Washington. Which, quote, the reason why they have rejected this, the SEC and the Big Ten, is because it leaves critical issues unresolved. What they mean by that is a number of things. There's not going to, they note it does not meaningfully preempt the patchwork of state laws or provide protections needed to make and enforce consistent rules across college sports. Okay, fair enough. Obviously, it's got to pass legal challenges, which ironically would largely come from Notre Dame, SEC, or Big Ten schools. We can throw Miami and Texas Tech into the mix as schools not in that classification. But that's the biggest group of challengers that are out there and could potentially be out there in college athletics. And they're going to look for loopholes no matter what. But as God rest his soul, Billy Mays would say, that's not all. The other reasons the SEC and the Big Ten reject the Protect College Sports Act, the latest edition, to try to put some kind of checks on what's going on in college sports, is because, quote, it shifts ongoing rulemaking to Congress, limiting the ability to adapt quickly as the landscape evolves. And there it is. The people who happen to have
lots of power
do not want to relinquish
lots of power,
and therefore, when posed with something that would cause them to lose
lots of power,
they will say for them it is
rejected.
Meanwhile, the other part to this is it also alters the House Settlement Revenue Sharing Framework, this proposed Protect College Sports Act. And it alters it in a way that may result in fewer student athletes receiving direct revenue share payments, code for the conferences and organizations that have
lots of power,
have more
Dollar bills, y'all.
and they want to be able to give more
Dollar bills, y'all.
because that gives them a winning advantage. That's why this is an arms race. And there's so many elements of this that are ironic. First of all, Nick Saban is the one who brought it up that this is an arms race when he spoke today in front of Congress.
It's become an arm race. Who spends the most has got the best chance to win. but I think it's a race to the bottom because if you don't spend to win, you lose your fan base and you don't have any revenue.
Nick Saban is not wrong in what he says about spend to win. If you don't spend, you lose your fan base, and it further restricts your ability to have additional revenue. Here's the thing, though. Didn't you start it? Like, isn't Nick Saban the one who began this trend in college football? He's the one who popularized having bigger staffs, having analysts, including former coaches that could come on as analysts, bloated support staffs, bloated coaching staffs. Again, not saying it's bad. It helped them win games, but he's the one who started it. I know plenty of people out there tied into the Alabama program and other programs who may or may not believe that Nick Saban in Alabama had ways to engage in NIL before it was officially called NIL, including the quote in the Armen Keteyian book. You can Google his name, the former CBS reporter, about where we are in college athletics, where Nick Saban's comment, and I'm going to paraphrase here in the fast lane, was something to the effect of, he said this to his coaches in their first meeting at LSU, go Tigers, that, quote, well, let me rephrase it, not quote, because I'm paraphrasing it. If I ever catch you cheating, you're at $, we're spelling that out, you'll be fired. ... But we can't control what the boosters do, and you know we cannot control anything they might do to benefit the program. Code for, we can't do anything, but if wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you may not have a relationship with a booster, and you may be able to leverage a relationship with a supporter of the program, a friend of the program, then we can assist. So it's amazing because to do that, you need more
dollar bills, y'all.
And therefore, the arms race, again, wasn't it kind of started by Nick Saban? But as God rest his soul, Billy Mays would say, that's not all. Yes. What might have prompted Nick Saban to leave? Was it really this? Or was it the fact that he's a guy that, like many coaches, thrives on control? And then a new system has come in where the control is shifted away from any coach to the players.
Now we have this unbelievable number of players that get in a portal every year, and we have nothing to control agents. We have nothing to control tampering. You know, Clemson had a player that was on campus for a whole week, and they come and got him off the campus and took him someplace else. So these kinds of things going on in college football are absolutely not what any of us signed up for relative to the educational institutions that, you know, we've all tried to represent.
The educational institutions, because Nick Saban never would have selected schools that may or may not have had more friendly academic standards than other schools. You know, never would have happened there. And again, this is a Nick Saban guy who appreciates him, but we can point out some of the double talk, shall we say, that may or may not have been coming from. He used the word control twice in the soundbite we said. When you hear Nick Saban, he's not wrong in the lack of control for college programs and coaches, or the fact that it's a financial arms race. But let's be real, he's been involved in some of this. Now, I do agree with him, the concept of how he predicts the direction of college sports is going to go.
Let me give you the history. My first year we had collective at Alabama, 2.7 million. Next year, 7 million. Next year, 10 million. I retired. Next year, 17 million. Next year, 24 million. Now you have schools that have close to $40 million rosters. So if we continue to do that, we're going to lose Olympic sports. We're going to lose non-revenue sports. We're going to lose scholarships. And basically what's going to happen is we're going to have football and basketball succeed, and we'll have club sports for everything else.
Don't a lot of them operate like that? I will grant you not all of them do. Look at college baseball if you really want to be relevant in other programs. But couldn't you argue that may or may not have been a factor in why Lars Tiffany is out at Virginia as their men's lacrosse coach? Because, you know, you want more fundraising efforts from your coach, which is not what they initially signed up to do. And yes, I get it's required for jobs right now, but that's the direction. Or schools like Virginia Tech, where reportedly, and David Cunningham of TechSideline.com could verify this when we chat with him around 5:40 today here in the fast lane, but curtailing the amount of spending. Men's basketball flat their expenditures from this year in the offseason to last offseason, when everybody else's expenditures on rosters are increasing. Why? I don't fault them, but you have to pump more money into football. And yes, those are the realities. Part of the reason why Kenny Brooks may or may not have left Virginia Tech for Kentucky, because they can afford to eat the financial losses on women's basketball at that school in a way that Virginia Tech cannot. And here's the other thing. I mean, you hear these people talking, and it's ironic because college coaches like Nick Saban, former coaches, or administrators like Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bavacqua, who used to be the NBC sports president, but they're double talking people whose job is to double talk. Like, that's what politicians generally do. I know I'm getting cynical, but I'm offending Republicans and Democrats right now here in the fast lane. And Pete Bavacqua, he had this to say where he criticized the concept of a Super League, but then advocated for it and got the nudge in that Notre Dame should be part of it.
My second concern is if you want to truly maximize the media value around the largest sport in terms of eyeballs, which is college football, I do think the best way to do that is a Super League. And I certainly don't want a Super League. I'm not sure anybody necessarily wants a Super League. Flooding the market, aggregating the market, bringing it to an aggregate form to major media companies, I'm not sure that's going to drive the value some say it will. If you wanted to maximize media value around college football, I think you would take 24 to 30 teams, create unbelievably competitive scheduling where a team like Notre Dame would play Alabama, Georgia, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, and start to get a number that more closely resembles an NFL number. I could be right, I could be wrong, but that's why I was encouraged that it's a voluntary application and that a lot more work could be done over the course of the next series of years to see if the value could prove itself out.
Oh, so it's a voluntary application. So that means a school like Liberty, who has a very strong amount of financial resources, they could join the Super League even if other schools like Mississippi State, Northwestern, Wake Forest, and Minnesota cannot afford to. I'm just throwing them out there as hypotheticals. Or is it you have to be invited because you as a former network executive know the schools that are deemed valuable and they're the ones that would get money? Again, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying we're not trending in this direction. All I'm saying is it's ironic that there's a lot of double talk that goes on with these particular people in college athletics, and that's the humorous part, to say the least. Meanwhile, in the fast lane, what's not humorous is if you're ever caught up in an auto accident and you're stuck dealing with the hassle of the insurance company, double talk they might give you, the runaround they might give you, any of their tactics, you need an experienced team that can help you navigate those annoying complexities. That is where Trost Law will come in to help. They have been serving our community for
not one, not two, not three, not four,
but over 4 decades, as LeBron James is loyally reminding us here in the fast lane. Trey's guy, I mean, he's the greatest reminder of all time. He reminds us all the time how long Trost Law, they've been serving our community since 1982. And it's easy to get in touch with them, 777-HURT and TrostLaw.com. Now, other topics, including prediction time in the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
If you're watching me on Fastlane, Ed Lane, or VTR and Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube, you can see me shaking to wake people up, because that's what we do right now with us at the NHL Finals. They started last night, 5-4 win in a thriller by Vegas at Carolina, and the NBA Finals begin tonight after the Women's College World Series, best of 3 on the VTR and Sports app between Texas and Texas Tech once again. We are at championship deciding time on your home for championships, the VTR and Sports app at 93.3 FM. Long series. I think we are definitely in for it in hockey. Last night kind of lived up to that the way it unfolded. You expect Carolina to bounce back. These teams seem to be even. Carolina's a little better over the course of the season, but clearly the championship winning pedigree lies on the side of Vegas. There's enough talent even. There's enough depth on those teams. You could argue Colorado was the other best team, but they were swept in 4-0 by Vegas. So you get that. Meanwhile, the NBA, if I were to make one projection, I think the Knicks win tonight, but the Spurs end up winning this series. Because I do think the talent is still great enough for the Spurs that they are coming into it. They're figuring out over the course of these series how to win. They are arguably one of the youngest rosters in basketball right now. Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, Victor Wembanyama, among others. They are figuring this thing out on the fly. The Knicks have veterans and championship-winning veterans. Karl Anthony Towns at Kentucky, but most notably the Villanova trio of Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, as well as Mikal Bridges. that have won championships at Villanova together. They understand, at least in a sense, how to play in championship-based, pressure-filled moments the way the Spurs are figuring it out. But I do think the talent is greater for the Spurs. I like the Spurs in 6 or 7 in that series. If you like parity in the NBA and the fact that this will be the 8th straight year with a new champion, 8 champions in 8 years since the run of Golden State, I would root for the Knicks. Look, I know they're annoying as all get out, and shame on me for advocating. But the reason is, even though at some point it's going to be hard to keep that whole core intact for San Antonio, they've got the best player right now in the NBA in Victor Wembanyama. They're going to get a championship if he stays healthy in the near term. The Knicks are less likely to maybe not get back here. Tatum for the Celtics, Halliburton for the Pacers, when they have a full year of being fully healthy, rather than coming back this year, even in the playoffs, from those Achilles injuries, they will be in a better spot and will be a bigger challenge to a team like the Knicks. Whereas the Spurs, they look like the team to beat in the West and maybe the NBA going forward. If you like parity, root for the Knicks, as painful as that is for me to say as an anti-New Yorker. Meanwhile,
Number 4.
I mean, there's sports, and then there's sports on crack, meth, heroin, fentanyl. Sorry to bring up bad notes, but throw it all together. And that's what this French Open feels like. Tell me if you recognize anybody that is left in the semifinals. The women's semifinals feature, and I know who they are, but you generally in the public. Marta Kostyuk against Mira Andreeva. Kostyuk from the Ukraine, great story. She has not lost a match on clay this year. Andreeva has had a lot of talent, but controlling her emotions is something she's had to learn to do. Meanwhile, Diana Schneider will take on Maya Cholinska, and I might even be butchering her last name in that other matchup. Schneider, by the way, former South Carolina Gamecock tennis player. That's the women's side. Arina Sabalenka lost today. She had a 6-0 loss of the third set today in her semifinal. It was a brutal loss against Diana Schneider. Meanwhile, on the men's side, 3 of the 4 you may not know. Matteo Arnaldi and Flavio Caboli, they're kind of Italian showmen in this one. And Jakub Minchik, who's 20 but not really well known, against the one guy people might know, but for all the wrong reasons, Sasha Zverev. The guy that I don't want to win, because just Google Sasha Zverev women, and you might see some allegations, multiple allegations, where, again, if it's one, maybe it's them. But when it's more than one, maybe it's you. And he has other anger management problems on the court. Just saying, read between the lines. You'll figure out what we're discussing. And he's your favorite to win the men's Roland Garros. The question is, by the time we get to Wimbledon, is anybody going to remember who won this? I love tennis. It has been really thrilling and exciting. You've had more 5-set matches in men's tennis and more 3-set matches in women's than you can find in a long time. But as far as memories, not exactly. Meanwhile, speaking of memories,
Number 3.
it's just memories now for Jared Verse in his time in LA. Does he need a hug right now? Because he got traded from the LA Rams, where most people want to play, along with a first-round pick in 2027, probably going to be at the end of the first round, a second-round pick in 2028, and a third-round pick in 2029 to Cleveland in exchange for Myles Garrett. And this is clearly the bigger headline move of the ones that occurred on Monday. The Rams should be the favorites to win the Super Bowl, but I would not bet them. And the main reason why is they are a very top-heavy roster. I would rather take them at a slightly lower value number in terms of projecting them to win the Super Bowl if you're just a betting person when we get later on, because I'd rather wait in the closer as we get through the season, because, I mean, what if Matt Stafford suffers an injury? He's had them before, and all of a sudden it's Ty Simpson. Doesn't that change the outlook even with Myles Garrett? They have a strong defense, but do you really trust that they'll be able to get past the hurdle of some of these other teams? I just think there's more value out there. Trey's going to love me for saying this, but the team that I have the most value on right now is probably the Chicago Bears. I know they won a lot of close games last year, but I kind of think Caleb Williams, to me, he's Brett Favre. He will be able to win a lot of close games. Now, in the playoffs, is he going to throw bad interceptions?
Ed, just say it. Just say it.
What? Say what?
Say I was right.
I'm getting mighty close to believing that, because I may or may not have projected them in a pick for the preseason
maybe
at 27-1 to win the
admit
Super Bowl.
You know, just admit it. I was right.
I'm getting very close to doing that. Not off the top, but I am getting close. Meanwhile,
Number 2.
just a nugget that we build upon our chat with Nick Pierce of the Liberty Flame Sports Network. We have that correct interview up, by the way, at Fastlane, Headlane, wherever you listen to podcasts. We had a little technical challenge getting that up last night and this morning, but we've gotten that rectified. Grand Canyon Baseball is going to announce Jacksonville State's Steve Bieser as their new head baseball coach. They might have already done it, but that news broke yesterday. Done a great job at Jacksonville State. Nick Pierce referenced the Gamecocks program as being one that's helped elevate Conference USA and what they did this past year, especially with the departures of Dallas Baptist as baseball only and Louisiana Tech going to the Sun Belt. But for Liberty, it still speaks to the fact that I don't think they're as likely to have this issue. If anything, Grand Canyon Baseball may be going to Liberty blueprint as a program that where they are a religious-based institution and they have great financial resources going forward. Meanwhile, a story we'll get to in greater depth in about 5 minutes, but we want to touch on it in
number one.
The news came down today. The Week 0 game. You know I love Week 0 football. Capitalize on it when it's the Sahara Desert of August and people want games. That August 29th game between Virginia and NC State down in Brazil, that will now be shifted to Charlottesville. The release says it's going to be played at Virginia in Week 0. Other people have said the date and week are to be determined, whether it's Week 0 or Week 1. I cannot help but wonder if there's more to this than what has met the eye.
They have to get a waiver for Week 0 since it doesn't meet any of the Week 0 thing that would be like out of the country or you play Hawaii.
All right. This is where if I'm the ACC, I do what the SEC and Big Ten would do. I put it in Week 0 and tell the NCAA to just challenge me if you don't like it, because we'll just do what the SEC and Big Ten do as well. Go ahead and lay the groundwork for a breakaway. It should be in Week 0, even if it's going to be hotter than Blue Blazes in Scott Stadium. Of course, the irony is they'll move it to Week 1. It'll be hot then, and Week 0 will be a week where it's like 73 degrees and sunny. Meanwhile, when we return to the Fast Lane, more on this development with Preston Willett of thesaber.com slated to step into the Fast Lane next on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM.
Mark Dalton here with Terry Volkswagen. Get ready to fall head over heels for the perfect VW SUV. One size doesn't fit all, though, and that's why Volkswagen has an SUV for everyone. From the compact and affordable Volkswagen Taos to the tech-packed Tiguan and the spacious Volkswagen Atlas. No matter which one fits your lifestyle, you'll love the comfort, performance, and safety. Stop by Terry Volkswagen on Forest Road in Lynchburg or check us out online at terrybw.com. Terry Volkswagen. You'll love our cars.
Guests are great, except unwanted guests. At Specialty Exterminating, we know the difference. Hi, I'm Sabrina Kennan with Specialty Exterminating. We help you keep unwanted pests out of your home. Now we can keep those reptiles away. Our new reptile repellent is the perfect add-on for your pest prevention service. It's pet and people safe, so it's perfect for any homeowner, especially pool owners and homes in wooded and rural areas. Call us so we can repel the reptiles. Specialty Exterminating, your pest prevention partner since 1979.
Hi, I'm Al Billingsley, a board member with CASA of Central Virginia. Children who have experienced abuse or neglect often enter foster care feeling scared, confused, and alone. That's where CASA volunteers step in. We stand behind these children to make sure that their voices are heard in court. CASA is looking for caring adults from our community to serve as volunteer advocates. And as a man, I can tell you we're especially in need more men to step up for these kids. If you're ready to make a difference, learn more at cvcasa.org.
Big news, everyone. Earthright Roofing is giving away a free roof. Go to our website to read the terms and conditions and see if you qualify for up to a $10,000 asphalt shingle roof at no charge. Must be 15 years or older roof to qualify. Come to our showroom for a double entry into the contest or go online for an entry. Enjoy, and we look forward to meeting you soon. Thank you. Visit earthrightroofing.com or call our office at 434-248-3697 for more information about the contest. We look forward to hearing from you.
At Farmers Bank, community isn't just where we work, it's who we are. For generations, we've proudly supported our neighbors, local businesses, schools, and organizations right here at home. When you bank with Farmers Bank, your money stays local, helping families buy homes, entrepreneurs start businesses, and our towns grow stronger. You're not just an account number here. You're a neighbor, a friend, and part of something bigger. Farmers Bank, your community, your bank, your future.
Hi, I'm Randy Trost with Trost Law. We've seen a lot since 1982. One new issue is an increasing number of uninsured drivers. Unfortunately, when these drivers are at fault for an accident, there's a higher likelihood that they'll flee from the scene, leaving you with a potential mess. So in shopping for your auto insurance policy, please keep in mind that strong, uninsured motorist coverage can protect you from this headache. And if you've been injured in a motor vehicle accident, call us at 777-HURT and visit trostlaw.com.
Spring means green lawns, open windows, and afternoons spent outdoors.
At Brownstone Properties, you'll find homes with private yards, with locations near scenic walking trails or beautiful local parks, perfect for family picnics or peaceful strolls. This season, find your place to grow. Start today at brownstoneproperties.com or call 434-385-1025. Brownstone Properties, where home is at the heart of everything we do.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Something smells fishy as we welcome you back into the Fast Lane. We're talking about the NC State-Virginia football game that was in week 0 that is now being shifted to Charlottesville, and no real official explanation by anybody has been given. Preston Willett of thesaber.com has been digging since this news broke at a time that would make Trey Lyle envious. It was right at the beginning of his podcast that he did today on Virginia baseball, and he did acknowledge it like a true professional would, but unfortunately has to wait another couple of days before he gets one out about this entire development. So why not try to get ahead of that podcast, the Saber podcast, with Preston Willett? Preston, do you have some information you can share with us before you do on your own platforms at thesaber.com and the Saber podcast?
All right, I get it, Ed. I see the real motivation here. Get before my podcast. No, yeah, it was wild. I was sitting there, and I'd heard from sources early this morning about kind of the official cancellation. This kind of all started bubbling up on Monday that this game could be moved from Brazil to Charlottesville. And then as soon as I had a post ready to go, and then Virginia dropped the official news and official confirmation, as well as the ACC at the same time, like right before I was supposed to go on the podcast to talk some baseball, because that just ended. So, you can't end one thing before the other thing jumps right at you. But yeah, this has been a really kind of confusing thing. If you think just from the initial timeline, this game got announced in the middle of December. These international games usually get announced 2-3 years ahead of time because it takes a lot to get people and fans to plan an international trip, much less an entire college football program to, may that be, to travel internationally. You got to think about passports, visas for these players going across seas, the coaches, everything. It's such a logistical nightmare, and that's exactly what it turned into, was a logistical nightmare between Virginia, NC State, the ACC, ESPN, and then really the at default. What most people are pointing at is Athlete Advantage, who was kind of running this thing. And if you look at kind of the statements that everyone put out, this change follows communication from Athlete Advantage, which informed the ACC and participating schools that the event could not be conducted. And I think this really comes down to the reason that these guys were going there in the first place is money, and the money just wasn't there. There's some other problems that are being cited, the logistics for one, safety. But I think that those two you probably could have seen coming. Like, those are issues that are known to be problems with teams going overseas, or especially going to a place like Brazil. So it really comes down to money. And I just don't think the money was there because you didn't give fans enough time leeway to book tickets and packages to go to this game. And now we're seeing both these schools, are just, they got to come back to the States.
What element of this is being the concept to these has kind of begun with what we've seen with the doubling games in week 0 and putting those on. But how much has the landscape shifted even since that began? Because right now, fans are being squeezed in so many directions, including donate to the school so that we can pay players, that if you're adding an unnecessary expense, particularly Virginia fans, which was initially going to be taking a home game and saying, instead of just enjoying a game in Virginia, why don't you hop on an international flight? That is too big of a thing to bear. And fans realized, fans kind of spoke with their wallets, if you will.
Yeah, it was a tough ask for anyone when you go from this game was supposed to be a home game at Scott Stadium in Charlottesville after, they were on the road last year in Raleigh. And then to put it in Brazil, which is not the easiest place to get to, by the way. And, there's a whole lot of logistics in getting there, and prices weren't cheap, especially right now with kind of the way things are. And it just became I think too much for fans to stomach. I know even just other fellow media members were looking constantly at prices and tickets and hotels and everything to try to get down there. It just wasn't logistically feasible for media, for fans, for really anyone to get down there. I knew very few people that were actually making the trip. So, the bright side, they are refunding people for this trip and the tickets and the packages associated with it. I don't think they'll have to make that many refunds in the long run because I don't think there was that many sold to begin with. There is talk and language now that because this, the ACC and both schools are kind of pointing the finger at Athlete Advantage, that Athlete Advantage will have to pay both schools payouts for this, which I think are about $1.5 million. That's the reported numbers. We haven't heard official numbers from either school. So if that's the case, you get a nice little payday for both Virginia and NC State, along with the fact that you get, your traditional home revenue for Virginia. They won't get the full revenue because this is being just kind of added into the season ticket package, but they won't get extra money because of the 7th game. So there's no changes to the season ticket prices that people have already purchased. It'll be a 7th bonus game for season ticket holders.
So they can, if you're a season ticket holder, are you just getting into this game? Do you have to buy these tickets separately now to the NC State Virginia game that suddenly is going to be at Scott Stadium after the news came down today that it will not be held in Brazil?
No, it's just added to the package. They won't add any money to it. So you get a bonus free 7th game. And honestly, it's a good deal for the fans because I've talked about this on the podcast a couple times over the last couple of weeks because Virginia just had another game moved to a Friday night. They were on pace to have 2 neutral site games because they also still have the game against West Virginia that's going to be played in Charlotte this year at Bank of America Stadium. And so you were only going to get 4 home Saturday games this year as part of that season ticket package, which isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things. And for most fans, Saturdays are when they have the time budgeted out to go to these games. Friday nights are a little difficult. I think that's still manageable, and I like a good Friday night game. Don't get me wrong. But you were losing neutral site games against West Virginia and then NC State, which is supposed to be a home game. So now you get this bonus free 7th game. On top of things, people that don't have season tickets, they will have to buy the tickets to go to the NC State game. But yeah, there will be no additional charge from what UVA put out today.
You will find no bigger advocate than I am, Preston, of week 0 football games. It is largely unclaimed real estate, market inefficiencies where North Carolina State, Virginia might not normally get a lot of headlines. It can still stand out on a schedule in week 0, whereas in week 1, even though the matchups nationally aren't great, you're just competing against bigger brands and cluttered TV slots. What's your sense on when this game is going to be played? Is it going to be making me happy in week 0, or is it going to be relegated to week 1 with everything else?
Well, there's so many different parties, and the release that they put out today said that both schools, ACC, ESPN, are working together to see when this game can get scheduled. I think if you're Virginia, if you're NC State, you want to stick right there in week 0 because you have that 3:30 time slot all to yourself, and now you don't have to travel over multiple time zones and multiple miles away to go to Brazil to play in that time slot. If you're ESPN, yeah, that's a little bit less appealing of a game because it's not in Brazil. It doesn't have the same appeal to seeing these teams play internationally. But also, if you're ESPN, what else are you putting there? You can't change around another team's schedule to put them up in week 0. So I really feel like why not just keep them there in week 0? And I think both schools, the ACC will want to keep that week 0 slot because you got the UNC TCU game right before that going over in Ireland. And if you're the ACC, you could have the next time slot. And week 0 is all about the ACC all of a sudden. So I think they'll be fighting hard to kind of keep that week 0 time slot. And we'll see if that ends up being the case. I think that's what all parties would want because there's not really a lot of benefit in moving it back to week 1 for most of those teams.
He now gets to be called my man, Preston Willard, planting his flag pro week 0 here in the fast lane because, what else are we going to be doing August 29th other than watching maybe some less desirable football game as opposed to NC State versus Virginia? Preston, pivoting off of that, though, we've had a couple of opportunities to discuss things going on with Virginia baseball. You have done an even greater amount of that on your most recent Who's On podcast, part of the Sabre Podcast Network. that dropped earlier today. We encourage our listeners to go check that out. Preston Willett on Twitter. You can get a link to it there as well. Virginia baseball for Chris Pollard, the Madison Heights, Amherst County native in year number 1 in Charlottesville, is the easiest characterization. Disappointing end, but still successful first season.
I think that's probably fair. And I'll say that, it really depends. We talked a lot about this on the podcast. It depends when your expectations where they were before the season. And I think, honestly, my mind, the best thing Virginia could do this year is get back to the postseason, because you're Virginia baseball. You should be in the postseason every single year without fail. And last year they failed it. They did not get into the postseason through a number of different reasons. And then, Brian O'Connor left, and comes Chris Pollard from Duke. And you had a lot of roster turnover in that. You had some guys coming back. You had a lot of Duke guys come in, and then you brought some other pieces in to fill out the rest of the roster. This team needed to get back in the postseason. And sure, when you got there, kind of my feeling going into the season, I was like, if they get into a regional, I think if things break right, they could get to a super regional, and that's not far off, because things could have gone a different way in this, regional. And, Little Rock is the one that comes out of this regional and they get onto the super regional. So yeah, things could have broken a different way. Maybe Virginia gets to a super regional, but I think it's disappointing in the fact that they're still not playing baseball. Sure. And you expect as a Virginia baseball fan that Virginia is in a super regional or Omaha every single year, because that's just kind of what Brian O'Connor did. But I still think in the same regard, it is really hard to come into a baseball program in year one and have immediate success when you have to change over a good majority of the roster, at least half the roster. It's not like football. It's not like men's basketball. That doesn't just happen organically. We've even seen bigger programs like Texas and Mississippi State. Mississippi State's still going, but that's because a lot of the guys that are playing for them right now, I know a lot of people made a big deal about the Virginia players going down there. It's almost all Mississippi State players that they retained from last year. So they had that continuity coming into this year. On the other end, Texas last year, they got to a regional and they had a good regular season, but they couldn't get out of their own regional. So it's hard to have really good, big leaps in year one, I think is what I'll go with.
We'll wrap it up on this one. Preston and I can agree to disagree on, look, I don't have a problem with players celebrating, but you got to be a little bit smarter about that, which has led to the ejections. The big one I have more of a problem with is John Payon, because it seemed like he said something more like, to quote Kenny Powers, the baseball legend that he was, "You're bleeping out." You got to be at least smarter than that, right?
Yeah, there's so many lip reading specialists that have been on this video for the last week or so trying to decipher what could have been said. I think we know one of the words for sure. The other one that followed, we're not entirely sure. So I do think, look, we've seen this in college baseball for a number of years now. These are some of the most highly charged emotional games in college sports, and that's why we love the NCAA tournament for baseball. But I think on the flip side, the umpires have let their emotions go a little bit too high in some of these regional games and some of these NCAA tournament games, where I think they're just too quick on the draw to eject guys. And I don't think that ejecting John Payon or ejecting Kyle Johnson later in the game did anything to, dampen the flames that was igniting down there in Hattiesburg, because I think you saw a lot of emotions from the Southern Miss side. So I think that we have lost the plot in college baseball as far as an officiating standpoint. And I just think that a warning would have been a much better way to go there, because that changed the game entirely. And I don't think it needed to. Like, yeah, you don't want guys taunting the other team. Sure. Give a warning. Next time it happens, that guy's gone. That's what sports are supposed to be about. You get fired up. All right, cool off a little bit. If you do it again, I've already warned you once. It's like being a parent, Ed. Like, hey, I already told you once. If you do it again, I got to take the toy away. So I just think that umps could also calm down a little bit in the postseason.
I love the parenting analogies. They absolutely resonate in our house. We are at the point where toys, screen time, desserts, pantry privileges, it's all on the table to get taken away. Preston Willett with us in the Fast Lane. Preston, you have to take away your insight. We appreciate your time today in the Fast Lane. We look forward to keeping up with more of it at thesaber.com and the Who's On podcast.
Appreciate it, as always.
Preston Willett with us here in the Fast Lane. When we return to the other side of the ACC's Commonwealth teams, Virginia Tech, David Cunningham of TextLiveline.com. Their managing editor will translate what happened at their Board of Visitors meeting. They'll do it for us next here in the Fast Lane.
Celebrate 250 years of America with massive savings during the Liberty 250 savings event on the Sheeler Motor Mile. Right now, get an additional $250 fuel savings discount on all new and used vehicles. An additional $250 in fuel savings. Shop over 2,000 new and used vehicles in one location, including more than 1,000 quality pre-owned vehicles with most makes and models at the Used Car Superstore. Plus 12 new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Toyota, Subaru, Chevrolet, Buick, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Used cars starting at just $59.95. $59.95. And your trade is worth more. Shop local and save with straightforward pricing, exceptional service and selection, certified friendly staff, no games, no gimmicks, and more inventory arriving daily, plus flexible financing options for every budget. We've got the credit. The Sheeler Motor Mile delivers choices. The Liberty 250 savings event on the Sheeler Motor Mile. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Example 2009 Chevrolet Impala, stock number KA260134B, plus tax tag title and $697 processing fee.
The clock is ticking. Time is running out for Virginia citizens to purchase modern sporting rifles and magazines from Big Boys Guns. Beat the July 1st deadline. Right now, the selection is robust at Big Boys Guns. ARs, AKs, and the most popular handguns will soon be banned from sale in the state of Virginia. Don't wait. Visit Big Boys Guns before the inventory is gone and not allowed to return. Shop 24/7 at BigBoysGuns.com and in store on Route 460 in Blue Ridge.
What if counseling services were just a click away? With secure, confidential telehealth sessions through Central Virginia Counseling, you can connect from wherever you feel most comfortable, anywhere in Virginia. No commute, no waiting rooms, just personalized care designed to meet you where you are. Support is closer than you think. Start your journey today on your terms. Visit centralvirginiacounseling.com to get started.
Midday hunger hitting you hard? Swing by Macadoo's for our $8.95 weekday lunch specials. Whether you're craving a classic crunch or something fresh, we've got you covered. Chicken tender basket featuring crispy golden tenders served with fries. The Macadoo's Chef Salad, a healthy, loaded favorite that will hit the spot. Hit back against your lunchtime hunger at Macadoo's with eats that won't break the bank.
Time to share great food and fun. Just to be there, the only one. Just to be there at Macadoo's.
We'll see you at the Do's.
Springtime is AC tune-up time, and all it takes is one call to Terrell E. Mosley to get your system ready to roll. And their tune-ups come with a guarantee that if you have a breakdown, they'll credit the entire cost of the tune-up toward the cost of the repair. Save energy and prevent breakdowns. All it takes is one call to the comfort people at Terrell E. Mosley, Lynchburg's oldest and trusted HVAC contractor for 90 years. Visit TerrellEMosley.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
He is our translator, David Cunningham, managing editor of TechSideline.com, because he was there at the latest Board of Visitors meeting for Virginia Tech, and now he joins us today here in the Fast Lane. David, great to be speaking with you. How long from when you're at a meeting to a chat like today in the Fast Lane does it take for you to fully compress and digest what transpired, especially since I can imagine some of this might be the equivalent of city council meetings?
Yeah, Ed, great to be with you. It's a lot of jargon and a lot of governance. And yes, I can imagine, for those of you who have never been to a Board of Visitors meeting, it's a lot of structure, and they have policies by way they do things. And there's a lot of sitting around and waiting and a lot of discussion about stuff. Well, Ed, I'll tell you what there was not discussion about, really about passing Hokie Ventures. This athletics-related corporation that is in Virginia Tech's wheelhouse now, there was no discussion about it. Obviously, there were presentations from Brandon Hall, Virginia Tech Athletics CFO, and Amy Sebring, Virginia Tech the university's, I should say, CFO or COO. But outside of that, no discussion about it. There's a lot of discussion when you go to these meetings, and they can drag over 2 or 3 days. Not discussion about the athletics portion. It passed unanimously. And I think that's really important as far as Virginia Tech athletics and how it continues to compete in the future.
David, put this into layman's terms for us if you don't mind. Well, let me phrase it. My wife would kill me for phrasing it that way. Would you please put it into layman's terms for us today in the Fast Lane? How does Hokie Ventures, the establishment of it, benefit Virginia Tech and Virginia Tech athletics?
It will allow Virginia Tech athletics to honestly be better resourced and better funded. And Virginia Tech athletics, I think, will be able to go outside of a lot of university and state-related red tape as far as funding programs. And that includes NIL. This is a kind of a mirror setup, Ed, to how the Virginia Tech Foundation is set up for the university. And there is money in the Virginia Tech Foundation as far as philanthropy goes, and it raises money, and that money can be pulled by the president and the university. But below that are subsidiaries like Hotel Roanoke and the Corporate Research Center, where they make money and bring money in. But Virginia Tech can also put money in. So I would explain it as they are basically outsourcing, in a way, more financial aspects of it, and it will allow Virginia Tech athletics in reality to essentially go around a lot of legal red tape, especially when you're tied to a university, and it will allow them for new revenue generation. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means going out and getting corporate sponsorships, things of that nature. There was a lot of discussion at the Board of Visitors meeting about, we've got this campus in Alexandria, Northern Virginia, right? We partner with people like Northrop Grumman and Geico for certain things up in that area. Those are just two small examples. Let's partner with them and get them on as sponsors and make money. And it will allow them to have a bigger emphasis on big picture fundraising. There's a lot going in here, but I would also add, Ed, NIL. You're going to see Virginia Tech use this as NIL generation. The Hokies will probably funnel NIL money through this thing, to be point blank. Not that they are just going to take it from some places and give it right to the athletes, but I think through fundraising and through sponsorships, NIL will flow through that mechanism back into the athletic department, because it will make it easier for them to raise funds as a athletics related corporation, if that makes sense.
It does. And it allows them to be competitive in that space, which is necessary to keep up, particularly with the top half of the ACC, where we know SMU and Miami, at least, are two of the programs that have very deep pockets. David Cunningham of TexasIsland.com is with us here in the Fast Lane. John Rakovich last week removed by Abigail Spanberger from the Board of Visitors as the rector. How did that influence the tenor of the Board of Visitors meeting yesterday?
Honestly, it didn't really influence a ton over Monday and Tuesday, outside of maybe one or two side comments about stuff, just about the policy and the way they're proceeding. But it was pretty smooth, Ed. I was there all day Monday and almost all day Tuesday, and things ran smoothly, as you'd expect. I think some people thought maybe Rakovich would show up and maybe there would be a little bit of commotion. Nope, there was none of that at this week's meeting. And I think that's a promising sign for things to come. Now, I'm not saying that means this whole ordeal is over, because maybe Rakovich Spanberger continues in court. But as far as the Board of Visitors and the way they carried out the proceedings this week, I thought it was pretty smooth altogether. They elected Jim Miller as the rector unanimously, Nancy Dye as the vice rector. Those were the only two nominations brought forth. And they also talked about the presidential search and how that's going to proceed. And they're going to take a little bit longer than originally thought. And I think it's important to get this across. I think a lot of people made this out to be a giant political thing. And while I'm sure there were I know there were political aspects to it. John Rakovich was trying, he said this openly, that he wanted to try to get the presidential search done by July 1. And that is moving very, very fast, especially in the academia world. Well, the presidential search committee which is made up of 22 people, met yesterday, and I was in that room when they were meeting in the open session, and they decided that they're going to aim for a timeline of hiring and announcing a new president by December. So that gives you some perspective on kind of where the group feels like they should operate and where they will operate versus maybe what the old regime thought and how fast they should be moving on something like this.
David, how does this transition away from John Rakovich as the rector to the Board of Visitors at Virginia Tech impact the Hokies' ability to follow through on what they promised James Franklin in terms of resources and the ability to consistently fund the football program at a level necessary to compete among the elites in college football?
Well, I think Hokie Ventures is the start of that, Ed. I think what you will see is Virginia Tech be extremely proactive in going out and through Hokie Ventures, going out and raising funds. I mentioned sponsorship, but it's more than that. It is bringing in giant donations. There's a giant donation in the works that is expected to be announced soon. And those are small things, obviously a big donation, but small things to get the ball rolling on this. The university is loaning Hokie Ventures $15.2 million, which came from the Invest to Win plan. It's bridge funding. That's going to get the ball rolling. But then you've got to go out and get the money. And when you do get the money, you have to set James Franklin up and other programs to succeed properly. And I thought Ed Brandon Hall, the CFO of Virginia Tech Athletics, explained it very well. Hokie Ventures, they're going to set this thing up so it is a vehicle with the keys in the ignition ready to go for the next athletic director to basically pick up and go. And you're going to have much more funding than you did before. Now, you have to go out and get that money. The money's not going to be sitting there and it's not going to come easily, but that is the hope. The hope is that this allows Virginia Tech more flexibility and agility. I think agility is a key word. Maneuverability as far as going out and raising money. And as we all know, you turn that right around and reinvest that back into the athletics programs. And this is very similar to Clemson, Kentucky, Michigan State, Utah, Texas Tech, as other schools who have basically created a nonprofit or an LLC. And that is, it is a nonprofit, not an LLC, strictly because it allows better maneuverability. And also it's easier to deal with as far as Virginia law goes versus South Carolina law or other state laws. But other schools have this too. And Virginia Tech, I think, is one of probably 15 schools in the country to now have this opportunity to raise funds in a different way and to essentially, Ed, fund their rosters in a different way that other schools around the country aren't necessarily doing. There are some, but I would say Virginia Tech is ahead of the majority in this regard. And I think you will see that impact show up in football. It'll be interesting to see the timeline as far as when a CEO is hired of Hokie Ventures. But once they get the ball rolling on this and the funding and the donations start to come in, it'll be really interesting to see the direct impact it has on Virginia Tech athletics, because it's basically going to be another fundraising arm alongside the Hokie Club.
That is very helpful to know. And at least it paints for Hokie fans an optimistic picture, even though it's stuff that is going on behind the scenes and may feel nebulous. It's important to know all these things. And that is why David Cunningham is covering them for TechSideline.com. Keep it locked to the latest TSL podcast. More will drop in the next couple of days with more details on this. In the meantime, David, thank you for taking a moment for us today in the Fast Lane after your brain has had a chance to process and sift through everything else you had to endure and sit through at a Board of Visitors meeting.
Much appreciated, Ed. I'll talk to you soon.
It is our pleasure. David Cunningham of TechSideline.com here in the Fast Lane. We're at Fast Lane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and however you listen to podcasts. And we're at W227BG Timberlake, WVGMA, Military WMNA, Gretna, Danville, Southside. That does it for us today. Now on to Freddie and Harry, the remainder of that in progress. Then the college softball World Series finals.
7:45.
And then after that, we'll join the NBA Finals Game 1. Knicks Spurs in progress on your home for championship sports, the VTRN Sports app and 93.3 FM.
Go to careers.progressive.com and apply.